Good people, all this Christmas time, consider well and bear in mind what our good God for us has done in sending his beloved Son. With merry holy we should pray to God with thanks this Christmas day. In Bethlehem upon the morn there was a blessed Messiah born. The night before that happy tide, the noble Virgin and her guide were a long time seeking up and down to find a lodging in the town. But mark how all things came to pass, from every door repelled alas, as long foretold their refuge all was but a humble oxen stall. Near Bethlehem did shepherds keep their flocks of lambs and feeding sheep, to whom God's angels did appear, which put the shepherds in great fear. Prepare and go, the angel said, to Bethlehem, be not afraid, for there you'll find this happy morn a princely babe, sweet Jesus born. With thankful heart and joyful mind, the shepherds went the babe to find. And as God's angel has foretold, they did our Savior Christ behold. Within a manger he was laid, and by his side the Virgin Maid, attending to the Lord of life, who came on earth to end all strife. Good people, all this Christmas time, consider well and bear in mind what our good God for us has done in sending his beloved Son. With merry holy we should pray to God with love this Christmas day. In Bethlehem upon the morn there was a blessed Messiah born.
Thank you. Beautiful, Lissy. Thank you. I love that. That was great. Great.
Nice picture.
Oh. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Merry Christmas. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate and honor you for coming and being a part of this. Christmas is, I think, a very powerful time. It's a special time. It's also sometimes a challenging time for a number of people. And so I wanted to make sure we had a place for people to come on Christmas Day who wanted to celebrate the service and celebrate the birth of Jesus, and also celebrate the awakening of the Christ Spirit in our lives. So I came across a little parody of Christmas. I always like to start off with something a little light. Listen to this parody for a moment. Christmas season, and there were in the same country children keeping watch over their stockings by the fireplace. And lo, was said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy that is for all people who can afford them. For there will be given great feast of turkey, dressing, and cake, and many presents, and this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the presents wrapped in bright paper, lying beneath a tree, adorned with tinsel, colored balls, and lights. And suddenly there will be with you a multitude of relatives and friends praising you and saying, Thank you so much. It was just what I wanted. And it shall come to pass, as the friends and relatives have gone their way to their homes, the parents shall say to one another, What a mess to clean up. I'm tired. Let's go to bed and pick up tomorrow. Thank goodness Christmas only comes once a year, and they go with haste to their cold bed and find their desired rest. And I came across this nice little reminder, a little checkbox, you know. Dear Santa, little checkbox. I've been good this year. Okay, most of the time. Well, once in a while, never mind, I'll get my own presents. I love that. And then another one from the great and wonderful spiritual sage, Johnny Carson. Mail your packages early so the post office can lose them in time for Christmas. Well, you know, I really thought about Christmas, and I just love the Christmas season. And I'll be honest with you, that's not always been the case. That's not always been the case. There were times when I was growing up, as a child, I just was so excited about Christmas. And I kind of got into my 20s, something in there, and kind of was really questioning what all this was really about, and I didn't really care much for a lot of the commercialism of Christmas. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed getting presents, and I enjoyed giving presents also, but I kind of went into a time where I was really not feeling the Christmas spirit, and I did that for many years and really was not really into it at all. And it wasn't until some years later that I really began to really listen in my own self to what it really meant to me. And what it really meant to me personally, not just in terms of tradition and all of that, but I also did come across an understanding, and awareness that are you aware that about 200 years ago in the early 19th century, you may find it astonishing, but Christmas was basically pretty much ignored in Great Britain and most places. It was not really something that was celebrated until about 200 years ago. And the Times newspaper did not even mention Christmas once between 1790 and 1835. Wow. Not once. There were no advertisements. There were no Christmas specials. I mean, there was nothing. And for that matter, the churches actually didn't really celebrate Christmas that much. In fact, the churches really kind of considered it a pagan holiday because it really was it was taken from the winter solstice. And I thought that was really fascinating to know that, well, it's actually a tradition, and we've got many, many years of tradition around Christmas that go back about 200 years. And Charles Dickens, actually, is the one who basically revitalized Christmas and really brought about an understanding and awareness of what the sentiment and the awareness of what that season might have been like. He was instrumental in reviving Christmas during the Victorian era, and he wrote a book, you guys know, A Christmas Carol. In 1843, for several reasons, he wrote this book. One was that at the time, unemployment and famine was absolutely rampant. It was about 1 in 10 people were as poor as you possibly can get, in absolute strict poverty. And we think about poverty in our country today, and there is poverty in our country today. But I can tell you, the poverty at that time, the people who are in poverty today in this country would have been considered absolutely wealthy compared to the poverty of that time. It was written primarily because Dickens wanted the challenge. He wanted to challenge the government and those who had and benefited from the blessings of their culture and their country to really look at themselves and look at their generosity and their compassion. And so the character of Ebenezer Scrooge was created. Anybody know who Ebenezer Scrooge is, right? Well, it brings really a challenge into focus, really. So nowadays, we want to, how many of you would like to be like Ebenezer Scrooge? Now, we've got a great little model of what we don't want to be like. And I have to be honest with you, there are times when I kind of feel a little Scrooge-ish at times. And I think we all probably do. We kind of see all the glamour and the glitz that goes on around Christmas, and we kind of go, what in the world? What is this all really for, So let's just kind of get this over with, and let's kind of look at and deal with our inner Scrooge. And I'm going to invite you all to just say with me, bah humbug. Bah humbug. Okay, bah humbug, good. We kind of got that out of the way. Let's move on, and let's really take the time to celebrate what Christmas really can mean to us and what it really is really here to show us. See, the magic of Christmas is not in the presents, but in the presence. Let me say it again because I'm not sure I alliterated it quite as clearly. The magic of Christmas is not in the presents, but in the presence. You getting it? It's in the presence of the divine. The real gift of Christmas is a recognition and an honoring of the presence of the divine, yes, in Jesus the Christ, and in Jesus Christ's teaching and message of who and what you and I are. And that presence that is within the heart and soul and spirit of each and every one of us. So I want to read to you this morning from Matthew chapter 2, starting with verse 1. And now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who was born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and have come to worship him. And when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will govern my people, Israel. And when Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star appeared, he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him. And when they had heard the king, they went their way, and lo, the star, which they had seen in the east, went before them, till it came to rest over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. This is one of the well-known stories of Christmas. And interestingly enough, looking at the story of Christmas and people have looked at kind of what the really sequence of these things were, and it's hard to really discern a sequence in many ways, but it's pretty much understood that all of the stories of Christmas didn't happen on a single night. That this was probably sometime much after Jesus was born, and that wise men were brought into an awareness that there was something magical, very special, unique happening in life and in the world. See, Advent in the Christmas season is actually a preparation for the birth of the Messiah, the one who is to deliver us from our darkness, our ignorance, and what I would call our unawareness, our unconsciousness. It is that one who's to basically show us how we can awaken that divine nature within ourselves. So typically during this time we look into stories leading to the Christmas, but we start a month after Jesus is born and working our way back. We are looking at also the story of Herod. Hi, JJ, come on in, brother. Merry Christmas to you. So we're looking at Herod, and we're looking at the wise men, and the term that has been used for wise men, the reality is we don't really have a lot of real factual kind of information about who and what these are. They were called magi, and magi actually is kind of short for magician. But the term magician back in those days was not someone who just did sleight of hand, but a magician was considered someone who had education and learning and had skills and abilities that were beyond the general public, you might say. They were astrologers, they were mathematicians, they might be considered the equivalent of today's physicist. And so they really, in some ways, were the earliest scientists in some ways. And so they were really looking at all of the different factors and things that they saw, including astronomy. They saw the stars, and they saw things lining up. And they were looking for a greater awareness of a spiritual light, of a spiritual nature. They were searching. They were seekers. They were true seekers of truth, really. And so I really love the story of the Magi, because in some ways I really believe that each one of us is a Magi, that the Magi represents something within us that is looking for a greater experience of the presence of the divine, a greater experience of the light. And so the Magi were seeking and looking, and one of the reasons historically we understand that they came from a place, an area that would be considered modern-day Iran. And they came from an area that they were familiar with Judaism and Jewish cultures of that time, because at one time the people of that time actually had conquered the area of Judah and what we now know as Israel. And they had ruled over them for many, many years until Herod basically kind of came into power through the Romans. And so the Romans basically pretty much put Herod in charge of everything. And so they were coming from a place, and Herod was not a real nice person. He was pretty much a tyrant. He was pretty brutal from what we know from history. And he really controlled Judah in such a way that it was really primarily out of fear. And the ruler of the area and the empire that the wise men came from, the guy that was in charge of that area, the ruler of that area, made Herod look like a schoolboy, in all honesty. And it was just a real oppressive place, real oppressive time. There were some great, powerful things that came out of that area, but it was really dark. It was kind of a dark place and a dark time, and they were really looking for light. And they were looking for some idea or some awareness of a Savior who was going to deliver not only them, but all of the people from this oppressiveness, from this darkness. And so they began looking, they began seeking, they began searching. And one of the things that they did is they searched a lot of the sacred writings, the sacred books, and they began looking at astrology, and they began looking at the prophecies, and they knew the prophecies of a king being born as a child. And they were able to see where it was going to be born, and it was going to be born in this place called Bethlehem. I'm not sure it was called Bethlehem at that time, but that's the name we know of as Bethlehem. And so they came looking to find a place and to really find more of the light. And I love just the metaphor of the wise men, of the Magi, coming and looking for the light, because it really is symbolic of you and I, each one of us, as we are seeking and searching. Now, we also have within us, all have a little bit of Herod in us that are not too crazy about, things that shake up our world, that kind of change our ability our power as we think, or at least our sense of control on the world. You know, that part of us that feels like we have to have things the way we think it's supposed to be, and we get real comfortable in how things are. And these wise guys, come in here and kind of stirring things up, saying there's this Savior out there that's going to be the King of the Jews. I don't think so. We're going to take care of that. So there's metaphysically, there's a part of us that wants things to be the way we want them to be, and we want them to stay the way we want them to be. So Herod kind of represents that resistant part of ourselves, that ego consciousness that wants to remain in control. And yet the wise men, they go naturally to the king of the country, because certainly the king would know if a new king was going to be born and a child was going to be born. And so Herod basically, says, well, I haven't heard of this, but if you find this child, you let me know, and because I want to go worship also. Well, we know that's not true. We know that place in us that really wants to do away with anything that conflicts or gets in the way of our sense of control, of power. Well, real power doesn't come from a place in us that needs control. If we feel we need control, we basically are feeling powerless. Wouldn't you agree? And so in some ways, this story is about learning to go past that place, to go beyond it. So the wise men didn't stop there. They went on and they sought and they found a star shining over a stable, a place of humility, a place of humbleness. And, you know, that's very important also, because that place of humility and humbleness really has to do with us being able and willing to let go. Let go of who we think we are, let go of the idea that we need or are supposed to be in some ways in charge or in control. It is just a way of really recognizing and honoring the value of our simple allowing life to be. And the more we can allow life to be, you'll be amazed what can be born out of that experience. It's just amazing how divine possibilities spring up when we really go into life in such a way that we're not holding on to and blocking the great possibilities of good in our lives. So when we think about it, we are like the wise men. We have a need and longing for hope. We know that the future can be better and brighter. We've, in the midst of all of the challenges, the wars, the killing, the darkness that we sometimes see in life, it's important to recognize that there's something greater, that there's something more powerful. There's something more vibrant and alive. There's something more uplifting and loving, and that we are able to be a part of that. We can participate in that. We need to know that we're never really alone, that there is a light in the darkness. There's a light in the darkness, and and we need to know that there will be someone who will rule. And that something and someone is not necessarily something or someone out here. And we don't necessarily want or need to give power to those things out here that seem to be ruling our lives, but to really turn within and listen to that place within us where we can know that there is a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, Prince of Peace. And he shall be called the Prince of Peace. Wonderful counselor. And the government shall be upon his shoulders. And the his that he's talking about is not just this idea of Jesus, but this idea of the Christ mind, the Christ heart that is within every one of us. And Jesus is one to show us how we can truly tune into and know that there's something more working in our lives and world than what we sometimes, the darkness or the unconsciousness or the anxieties or the fears that we see out here. Sometimes we are the magi. We're in a place of darkness. We need to find light. And other times, we are the light. And we're called to be the light, even in the midst of those places that seem dark. Sometimes it's a matter of really reaching out and just being a presence for someone in the world, being the presence of the divine. And we do that by sharing our divine qualities. Last night we had this wonderful service. I think most of you were here for our candlelighting service where we celebrated these divine qualities of faith and strength and love and power and peace. Actually, peace wasn't one of the 12, but peace is a combination of several of them. And so our task is about really being one in an awareness of our greater possibilities of good. And, you know, it's about really also coming to an awareness and a place where we can truly be in a place of, you know, one of the words that oftentimes comes up at Christmas time is the word adoration. You know, adoration, it's an amazing and interesting and powerful word that come let us adore him. Come let us adore him. And I think there's a real great power in tuning into that energy of adoration. Not necessarily just putting Jesus up on a pedestal, but to, how shall I put it, allow the Jesus person and character that exemplifies that Christ nature within us to be a model, a way of us learning how we can truly grow more in our own divine qualities, really listening to and letting that that Christ awareness be an image that we can tune into and allow ourselves to, yes, as many of the traditional Christians say, what would Jesus do? Ask that question. And then listen in your own heart to what would the Christ within you guide you to do in a particular circumstance or situation in your life or in the lives of others. So we celebrate Christmas. We celebrate the first Christmas, the story of Christmas. We celebrate the coming together of the wise men. I was thinking about the wise men, and one historian says that there's really no number that was given of the wise men, and we don't really know exactly where the three wise men came from, or where that particular tradition came from. But there's nothing in Scripture that says how many there are, and there are many scholars who say that there probably were as many as 12 wise men, which I thought was pretty interesting because we do celebrate the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples. It makes sense to me that there might be 12 of them. We don't really know how many they were, but they were people who came and listened to their guidance in such a way that they began to really seek and search for a greater sense of the presence of God in their experiences and in their lives. And we celebrate Christmas, what I call the first Christmas, which is the celebration of the birth of Jesus. And I call this lesson, you might say, the second Christmas. And I just kind of got that in one of my meditations as I was really listening and reflecting on what it is that I needed to share and talk about and learn from all of this. And what came to me is the second Christmas. And I thought, well, what is the second Christmas? What could that possibly be? And I thought about, well, this year my lovely wife and I got to celebrate the first birthday of our first grandbaby. And it was a really special celebration. It was a special celebration. And I thought, well, what would Jesus on his first birthday be like? And I have a feeling that he's just like pretty much any other baby. I'm sure he was quite curious, like our grandbaby. What's this? What's this? And what's this? Everywhere, just totally wanting to know what is. I'm sure that Jesus was like that. And I think that's part of the Christ spirit also. One of the 12 powers it ought to be curiosity. Because curiosity is one of the greatest gifts that any of us is given. And when we began to really look at ourselves and look at life with that curious spirit, with that spirit of seeking, that spirit of searching, just like the Magi, when we're really looking for a greater awareness and understanding and experience in life, it opens us up to the light that Christmas truly is. It really opens us up to the greater possibilities. And for me, the second Christmas is when we really ask those questions of how I can be more of an experience and expression of that divine nature that Jesus represents and shows us and demonstrates for us in our lives. There are ways that we come into the world. There's the ways we celebrate the Christmas spirit. We sing about angels. We sing about the stars. Those are all wonderful symbols that are there to show us the greater light that exists within each and every one of us. I came across this beautiful little poem, and it's by Howard Thurman. Many of you may be familiar with Howard Thurman. It's called The Mood of Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the king and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among people, and to make music in the heart. I love that. I love that. And so Roy Smith said, "He who has not Christmas in his heart will never find it under a tree." It's part of the awakening up of the second Christmas is just really tuning into that place in us where we are, yes, warmed and inspired by the life of Jesus, but also awakened to the greater possibilities of our own unique divine nature. Dickens, who really revived the Christmas experience in our world, said, "I honor Christmas in my heart and will try to keep it all the year long." So, and to close, I want to share with you a quote from Pope Francis. I'm not a Catholic, but I do really like this Pope. I have to be honest with you. There's a lot of things he says that really speak to me. He said, God never gives someone a gift that they are not capable of receiving. If he gives us the gift of Christmas, it is because we all have the ability to understand and receive it. And so I'm going to invite you to take some time to really pray about, listen, to meditate, and reflect on the message, the meaning, the significance of a second Christmas, and what that really means for you and your life, and how it can show up for you in your world. And let's move into our meditation time. So I invite you to just take a moment and look around. And just see that you're not only looking at the light of a candle, but you're looking at the light of the world. And the light of the world is looking back at you. And you are all beautiful. And this is the truth of who and what you are, what each and every one of us is. And we're so grateful for this opportunity to recognize that. And in a moment, we're going to extinguish these lights, but we're going to know that the true light is never extinguished. And we're always given the opportunity to let that light shine in some way, in some form in our lives. Oftentimes, not by challenges, sometimes by opportunities to recognize the grace of the presence of God in us, in our lives, and in our world, and sometimes by recognizing that we have what we need in these different qualities to overcome the difficulties and the challenges and the darkness that we see in our world. And we are a part of that. And so let's celebrate this wonderful Christ nature, this wonderful Christ light that Jesus came to show us by singing Silent Night. So in a moment we're going to extinguish these candles, but not the symbols. And so as you go forth from this service, this ceremony, this celebration, recognize that you are here to be the light of the world. And as you go forth, I invite you now to go out into your world and let your light shine. All right, let's blow out our candles, and we're going to close this ceremony by singing Joy to the World. Let's stand as we sing. Merry Christmas, everyone. I invite you to get at least 1 or 2 hugs before you leave tonight, and give thanks to God, and have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. God bless you all.